Thank you very much. After such a long introduction, you may be left asking, well, what is this really about? And I really think it's about the intersection of two minority groups, really, because most people have no idea what the technological singularity or transhumanism is, and most people have very little idea about what global health is and what all of you do in that field. So really, there's common interests in both groups. You can imagine a future in which the people attending this symposium, that number is so large that it'd be standing room only in here, that we need a much bigger room, eh? So that's the future that I see. And the same is true when you think about transhumanism. Why wouldn't everybody be interested? So why wouldn't everybody be interested in global health? Why wouldn't everybody be interested in transhumanism? So how do you increase the interest in something where it should be greater than it is? So some of it has to do with promotion and the positive message. Now, those of you coming to this talk today, what were you looking for? What were your expectations? Well, there's science behind that, and the science says you wanted a positive message. That people who give you a lot of negative messages, you don't trust that person as much, you're not as satisfied. So I'm going to give you a positive message here. It's only 2 minutes long, so it won't hurt too much. Jason Silva is a TV personality. He's married to an actress, as you can see, and he has this video, which I'm going to play for you now. Let's see here. Can find it. Here we go. Okay.
This episode was proudly made possible by Silva.
This is about transhumanism.
So there's a great line by Shakespeare in which he says, "We know what we are, we know not what we may be." And in the age of accelerating technologies in which we extend the cognitive reach of our minds, the perimeters of our humanness with these extensions of self, these exoskeletons, these technological scaffoldings, the wings of our aircrafts and the signals traveling through our smartphones, sending our thoughts electrified at the speed of light across oceans of sky. We redefine and extend what it means to be human. Edward O. Wilson says, we have actually decommissioned natural selection, and now we must look deep within ourselves and decide what we wish to become. We are now the chief agents of evolution. We have reverse engineered the software of biology and are about to rewire and upgrade and redefine what it is to be a Homo sapien. Juan Enriquez uses the term Homo evolutus, the being that evolves itself, that transforms itself, right? Ray Kurzweil, we didn't stay in the caves. We haven't stayed on the planet. Biology is just another membrane to be transcended. Marvin Minsky used to say, will robots inherit the earth? Yes, they will, but they will be our children. I love this idea because we hear the term transhumanism, and what it means to be human is to be transhuman. We are the species that transforms and transcends. We never stop. We always did. It's what we are.
Okay. So now, how does that make you feel? Do you feel, oh, this is too positive? It's obviously a waste of time because there must be a lot of downsides, and he didn't talk about any of the downsides, right? So, This idea of emphasizing the positive, most of you would know the singer Bobby McFerrin, and you'll have a chance to get to know him really well. in a few weeks when he's the main headliner at the Edmonton International Jazz Festival. You know, he has this song, "Don't Worry, Be Happy." And so do you respect that? Do you think that this is just tremendously simplistic? And we should really emphasize the problems that exist, the conflict that exists, and just get it right out there every time we talk about something. You know, in the modern world, you'd be surprised in any audience how few people are reading books right now. And how many people have strong opinions without reading books? How many people don't read newspapers? And so the world's different. And the idea that we're going to make the barrier to entry to either transhumanism or global health very high, where you'd have to know a lot of stuff, you have to read a lot of stuff, you have to do a lot of rites of passage sort of things before you even can enter the field, that's not going to work for either discipline. We have to make it easier somehow. These highly, opinionated people not reading very many books or newspapers, we still need to be reaching them. So transhumanism and the technological singularity are related concepts. Transhumanism talks about life expansion and all the possibilities when we start to enhance the human being. And that's related to Peter Diamandis' book, Abundance. Now this is an excellent book. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. It is very well written because he collaborated with a professional writer, and he's a very interesting guy. He's the founder of the X Prize Foundation and runs Singularity University and International Space University. And I bet not very many of you will read this book. And just think about why you won't. It's just a part of modern life. I'm saying that it's closely related to a lot of the things that I'm talking about here. And so Ross Lockwood, who many of you may know, he's a young person who took the course, and he and I are working together. Right now, Ross is on Mars. It's simulated Mars, but he was one of the 6 people selected for the High Seas Mars mission. There were thousands of applicants for this. He had applied before. If you keep applying often enough and are persistent, so that's where he is now at this four-month Mars simulation mission on the edge of a volcano in Hawaii. And this is what he has defined as soft transhumanism, particularly related to the behavior of young people. The last decade has brought a profound change the way we humans interact. Our imagined future of merger between humans and electronic interfaces crept into our lives. Social networks, adept at instantaneous bite-sized communications, now permeate the younger generations. There's still a chasm between hard transhumanism and this soft transhumanism, defined by our interactions with the things we're already carrying in our pockets, the personal electronics, but there's no sign of these interactions abating. Fully embracing this technological revolution within the university classroom and beyond is beneficial to the learning experience, to our cultural growth as human beings. And this is the way Ray Kurzweil has defined the technological singularity. It is a term that many people don't know, but the idea is it defines a point in time where machines become smarter than we are, take over the future agenda of the world, and we will then only be able to figure out what's going on or have any influence on it if we merge or join or cooperate with them in some way. And it has an analogy to the area around black holes in physics, where there is also something called the singularity, and so that's where the idea comes from. And it derives from the exponential change in price performance of computers. So, well, it's an awfully complicated graph. Yeah, but when you get right down to it, it's very simple. This graph over at the far right is telling you the following: that by next year, machines will be as smart as a mouse. Within 9 years, in 2023, machines will be as smart as individual human beings. And 31 years from now, in 2045, machines will be as smart as the entire human race, all of us put together. And at that point, they'll be in charge. Now, you're all sitting here thinking, yeah, it's not going to be in my lifetime. It is going to be in the lifetime of probably every single one of you. You probably misunderstand what's going to happen with longevity. Human lifetimes will approach the Hayflick limit of 140 years very soon. That's when our cells really stop turning over. And all the things, all the diseases that preoccupy you now will probably be easily treatable, preventable, or will not occur at all. It doesn't mean we won't have diseases. We could have bioterrorism develop diseases that are more challenging than any we have today, and there could be more of those than but that's only if things go badly. If things go well, the physicians of the future will need something else to do. But there's a lot to do, because there's also human enhancement. And who better than the doctors of tomorrow to be in charge of that? I'm not just talking physical enhancement, moral, spiritual enhancement. There's no end to the human being's desire to be enhanced in those three ways. And then improvements in society to promote health and well-being and peace between peoples. If you put all that together, you have something that Rudolf Virchow had called medicine writ large. And that's very, very large. It's large enough that you have to pick a starting point when you start thinking about it. And why couldn't global health be that starting point? I mean, you have to have something common as a kind of portal to this huge area of medicine writ large that would exist even if all current diseases are gone in the future. Now, you could be excused for not knowing anything about the singularity before February 2011, but in that month of that year, two absolutely remarkable things happened in terms of promotion and human experience. The technological singularity was on the cover of Time magazine. 2045, the year man becomes immortal. And that same month, Watson, a computer, beat the top human contenders on the TV game show Jeopardy! Over 3 days in a progressive fashion. This wasn't just a fluke where Watson happened to beat the top contenders. He got better and better. And by the third day, it was clear that not only could he beat these two human beings, but now, permanently, computers were better at the game of Jeopardy! Than human beings ever could be, just as had previously happened with chess and checkers, many other human endeavors. Now, you can think of many things that will change very soon. It's predicted that there will be a universal translator in 2021. We don't know exactly what the technology will be, but the predictions are somewhere between 2019 and 21 at that point. And such things that they're kind of primitive already are beginning to exist today. So everybody will be able to talk to everybody else. Language will be no barrier. Our lives will be richer. 2045 is only 31 years from now. Many of you will still be working then. You don't think you will, but you will. Life's going to change a lot. What will medical careers be like then? As I've said, all natural diseases may be eliminated, leaving only man-made diseases. But those man-made diseases, if things go badly, could be much worse than any diseases we face today. They could be designed to have no antidote, no treatment. And stem cell technologies will be able to create organs at will that are compatible with our own bodies, that will not reject. And the focus of medicine could shift from disease to enhancement to improvements in society. This is a picture of Rudolf Virchow. Very interesting guy. He believed that the idea of everybody having a microscope was not going to happen. So when he spoke at a group like this, have this little train track and have a microscope with a slide going from person to person on this little train, and they'd all be looking, and then the train would go down the track. And almost every quote that he is known for today was written in 1848 when he was 27 years of age. So those of you who are 27 now or have recently been or are going to be, it's rather intriguing to think of the impact that he had at that age. But he also had the most spectacular 80th birthday that any human being has ever had. This 80th birthday party was written up in the Lancet. It was a big event. There were medical journal articles written just about the birthday party when he turned 80. So he's kind of a cool guy in many ways. He said it's the curse of humanity that it learns to tolerate even the most horrible situations by habituation. Physicians are the natural attorneys of the poor, and the social problems should be largely solved by them. Medicine is a social science, and politics is nothing else, and this is where this phrase that I've been using comes from. Politics is nothing else than medicine writ large. Medicine as a social science, as a science of human beings, is the obligations to point out problems and to attempt the theoretical solution. The politician, the practical anthropologist, must find the means for their practical solution. As I've said, this makes medicine huge. And I think that we should embrace global health as being a kind of much bigger part of medicine than most people think it is. Why wouldn't a lot of people who are not in this room now be really interested in what we're talking about? They just don't know about it. They just don't realize what the potential, the discipline of global health is. And why shouldn't the focus of technology not be on its application for the poorer countries of the world, the patients in those countries, telemedicine, the apps on smartphones, the doctor in your cell phone. I think this could be a very important aspect of medicine writ large and the future use of technology. So we have, since 2011, been teaching a course on this stuff. It's called Technology and the Future of Medicine, Lab MP 590, and any of you in this room or any of your friends or associates could take this course. We've had people taking it from age 17 to 77. We have undergraduates taking it for credit, graduates taking it for credit. We have people coming and just sitting in the seats who are not taking it for credit. If you would like to visit this course, you can. And it may surprise you that sometimes in the first lecture during the discussion, you'll find David Zakas giving the last word. That happened once. So how could that happen? Well, we should have prevented that, eh? There was a security breach. No, it wasn't. We are very proud of our diversity and balance. It only makes sense to teach about the future if you teach many different scenarios, many different points of view. And if you do that, then you can guarantee the student, and it's very exciting to think about, we are in this course teaching you about the future. We are telling you exactly what the future is going to be like. It's going to be one of these scenarios. We just don't know which one. But when you experience the future, you will find that it is probably nearly identical to one of the scenarios presented in this course. We are not passive victims of the future. We can shape the future in a positive way. And so I say that the main purpose of the course is to make the students street smart for the future, prepared for the future, more adept at taking what the future gives us than maybe the other people who haven't thought about these things before. It's not just about technology, it's also about traditional things. Like about karma going back 7 generations and forward 7 generations. We teach about that. We teach about celestial navigation. Do you know about that? In 1998, most navies gave up teaching navigating by the stars. It was always the hardest course for pilots, and nobody liked the course, so they stopped teaching it. Then there were these huge ships in the ocean dead in the water. When the computer went down, nobody knew what to do. So now, once again, in 2014, everybody's teaching celestial navigation. That sounds something like it's something good. Intercontinental ballistic missiles also use it because they're concerned about something jamming the guidance system. One thing nobody can jam is the sun and the moon and the stars. So that's not so nice to think about, but it's another way in which celestial navigation is used. So we base the course on focus groups, both undergraduate and graduate students in May of 2011. The students strongly felt, just as I've said, that the course should be public, open to anybody who wants to come and sit in the seats, anybody who wants to be a part of the discussion, and really well recorded. So we have broadcast quality video, the best video and audio quality you'll see anywhere, with pure white background. People look better on that video than they do in real life. And a lot of women have talked about this. It's an amazing thing to see yourself on video and realize that's substantially better than you really look in real life. So we're very proud of this, and over time, the course sessions have developed a kind of pedagogical rhythm of a 10-minute intro usually by me, a 50-minute lecture, 20-minute discussion. And in the course, we talk about machines replacing many of the functions of human beings. Well, what about that camera right there? It just looks like an ordinary camera to you. But it's not only a video camera, it also takes still pictures using a computer algorithm looking for smiles and hand gestures. I'm trying, but of course it's proprietary. I don't know exactly what the formula is. And it's very, very entertaining. Some lecturers, that camera doesn't take a single still picture, and others it takes hundreds. So we never know until the end of the lecture how many of these computer-generated pictures there are going to be from that camera. But many of them, like this picture here, how would you get somebody to pose for that picture? It's a bit hard. Say, okay, put your hands over your head. No, that's sort of a moment. That's a picture, as many of ours are. Really intriguing picture that would be hard for a human being to capture because it's like a split second. And yet that's as long as it takes the computer to figure out that pose fits the algorithm, so we're going to capture it right now. It's just one example of many ways in which many human functions are done better by computer. We've improved the video and audio quality in the course a great deal. You can see how unpleasant that first session looked. Lighting and sound and everything was terrible, and but now we have very pleasant. We're in a huge room, small number of people, maybe 14 to 20 people in a room that would hold, I don't know, 300. So we look a bit odd, but it ends up with very good quality. And so you say, well, you've talked an awful lot about this course. What important impact could it have? And these broadcast quality videos, okay, so do some go viral? What's the deal? Well, is there anything better than video going viral? I think there is, and that's what happened to this student, whose name is Aisha Harian. So it's not only the faculty lectures that are posted on YouTube, but also the student presentations, the 20-minute student presentations. 3 days after her video was posted, she got a job offer from New York City, the sort of dream job. She didn't even know this job existed. And it ideally fit in the gap between the end of her undergraduate work and the start of her graduate program. It was just the most unbelievably positive thing to have happened, and for it to occur so quickly. So she's now the director of social media at Can Do Inc. A lot of her friends have started to take the course because it was a very, very surprising and positive experience. The title of her talk, The Immortal Coil, Existential Risks at the Dawn of the Singularity. What I don't really know, each student has a mentor, and I don't know if Earl Waugh, who is her mentor, or she came up with that title. But anyway, it's like the most awesome title that we've had for student presentation thus far. Very diverse faculty. When Heather Graves first started teaching in the course, I think she thought she got in there by accident. We wouldn't keep her, and it's just what was somebody from English and Film Studies doing in this course about technology. But she plays a very important role, and it's important in such a course to not only have tech advocates, but tech skeptics. You can find a great deal about the course at this website, singularitycourse.com, and you can find all the previous lectures and teaching sessions on my YouTube channel. There's no required content. Have you ever taken a course where there's no required content? There is no required content. You can pursue whatever area that fits within the course you want. You can focus all your efforts in the course on that. The trick of that is, of course, that the lectures are so interesting that whereas in theory you could stay home and just write the paper and give your talk and that would be it, nobody does that because they want to be there to hear the lectures, to take part in this very interesting discussion. We don't have a problem with people not showing up for class. The course content includes the technological singularity, existential risks, those things that could wipe out the whole human race, artificial intelligence, genomics, and nanotech, ways to optimize a positive outcome for humanity in the coevolution of humans and machines, and the influence of these considerations on medicine of the future. The Dean of Science teaches every term. The Dean of Arts sometimes teaches. Most lectures are not very medical. As you think of a medical lecture, if any of you don't really have a medical background, you would be able to understand all the lectures in the course except one. And there's a balanced view provided by incorporating both tech skeptics and tech advocates. And the course teaches about global health issues. One of the lectures is about the new medical school we've created in Kathmandu, Nepal, Patton Academy of the Health Sciences. So there's significant time in the course devoted to medicine in resource-limited settings and to global health. It's interesting. Bibiana Kujek, who gives this lecture, you know, we got a lot of feedback from the students, and routinely some of them think it's the best lecture in the course, some of them think it's the worst lecture in the course. So it shows you the kind of diversity that we have, both amongst the students and the faculty. The course is now an official medical student elective, and Adam Mildenberger is a medical student taking it right now and having quite a lot of fun in it. There's international peer review of the YouTube videos. We took the top 5 lectures and we thought the worst thing is this self-praising sort of cycle that you get into of talking about how wonderful the course is while not doing anything to make it better. So we took the top 5 lectures and sent them out to really prominent people in the outside world, asked them how to improve them. And so that, for instance, has meant that in the future we've broken the quantum biology lecture into 2, and we have this young person, old person counterpoint lecture between Abdullah Saleh and Earl Waugh. Many other innovations like that. It is the only course of its type, but there's another course that's a little bit like it, and that's in Budapest, Hungary. There's a course on disruptive technologies in medicine. And guess how old the guy who teaches that course is? He's an MD, PhD. He's 29 years old, and his birthday is in November. So not only is he 29 years old, he's going to be 29 for quite a long time. So he's a really cool young guy who teaches a course somewhat similar to ours. And then there's Future Day. There's Future Day in the title of my talk today. What is Future Day? Well, you know, I think there are a lot of surprises in this talk for you today. Ordinarily, you get people talking about initiatives that are growing, right? And I'm going to talk to you about something that's sort of going the opposite way. I'd say Future Day is something worth supporting, but it definitely, if you look at the numbers, there are fewer cities in the world celebrating Future Day every year, and we're just about the only one at the present time. So this is Edmonton's first Future Day on March 1st, 2012. Small celebration, and that year there were 16 celebrations around the world. In Melbourne, Sydney, you can read the other cities. But the next year there were 12, the next year there were 6. You can see it. Yeah, so it's going to become a very Edmonton-focused thing because of the failure of this idea of Future Day to catch on in other places. So I don't know if that's entirely bad. So we're planning something potentially at the Art Gallery next year with Julie Lin Wong. And the students in the course, some of whom are here, play a big role in our plans for Future Day and the activities. Future Day is March 1st. You can be excused for not knowing that March 1st is Future Day because, as I say, that this is becoming less and less of a popular thing worldwide. If you're really going to make a success of a new holiday, it has to have pageantry, it has to have branding, it It has to have memorable things. If you think about the other holidays in your life, they're not just a name. They're a whole series of ceremonial things and memorable social events and so on. So we've tried to think of how could we do that with Future Day. So you know the Holi festival from Asia, the Indian subcontinent, where people sprinkle pigment on each other. I'm not saying that should be what we do, but it's one thing to think about. It provides some experiences. Most of you probably haven't been in an experience quite like that. Originally, the pigments in the Holi festival all came from plants that were all non-toxic, but you can imagine it's hard to find brightly colored pigments like that are from plants. So it's a lot easier to get them from paints, and the paints are toxic. So now there's a whole branch of medicine in India and Nepal dealing with all the problems of human health that come from having all these pigments sprinkled on you. And there's a guy enjoying the moment in a very colorful crowd. So if that doesn't quite do it for you, you can maybe get a similar feeling from this poem. Forever on my Facebook page, the only poem on my Facebook page not written by me has been this one. It's called Crayola Bomb. Maybe we should develop a Crayola bomb as our next weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb. And every time a crisis developed, we would launch one. Would explode high in the air, explode softly, and send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to earth, boxes of Crayolas, and we wouldn't go cheap either. Boxes of 64 with a sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and copper and magenta and peach and lime and amber and umber and all the rest. And the people would smile and get a funny look on their faces and cover the world with imagination. If that doesn't do it for you, those of you with a Roomba, robotic vacuum cleaner, do you know what happens if you take a time-lapse picture? Well, that's pretty colorful. Or maybe a hot air balloon festival. Anyway, somehow we need to come up, if we're going to make this a successful holiday, with some associated pageantry, and I'm soliciting your ideas of what that might be. So Future Day, you'll notice some of the characters in this room. This is Future Day from March of this year, and this is one of the students in the course, Anson Dong. He chose to have that picture taken. And many of you may know that there's an article about me very recently in the Edmonton Journal. It's 4,000 words, and it's in that Saturday Insight section where they go into things in greater depth. And it may seem to you like that's going to really help me get students for the course, eh? Do you really think students read the newspaper anymore? I have never encountered a single student who got interested in the course because of that newspaper article. So it shows you how counterintuitive modern life is. That it's a wonderful article, but I think it's not going to help me reach new students in the course because they are not the ones reading the newspaper anymore. Okay, so I've talked a lot about students and so what? Well, the so what is really interesting because if you look at social media in the area of transhumanism in 2013 and before, it was a complete chaotic mess. So much that I would never have recommended to any young person that they join any of those groups. And it was just my bias that was all people trolling and these pointless arguments about things that don't really matter and people getting angry for no reason and so on. But one of the leaders in the field, probably one of the brightest people, has written this, that transhumanists are particularly fractious, blah, 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 blah. Down at the bottom, you see, here's the punchline. We probably should abandon the naive delusions that transhumanists are capable of working together effectively. Wow. Certainly not in groups over a significant size. Isn't that shocking? But you know what it represents, I think. And this, I believe, is something generally true in many sectors of human endeavor. There are a lot of problems in the world that middle-aged and older people, even the best and the brightest of them, cannot fix that young people can. And I strongly believe that. Because this would be a rather sad point in the course, in this lecture, if I told you, well, it's even worse today, but it's not. That I suggested to the students that they infiltrate these groups, that these personable, normal, outgoing students who take my course, that they go in and join the group, and that what has happened is the civility, the productivity of the course has improved a great deal. Is it a cause and effect? Is it possibly just coincidence? It could be. Maybe the students from my course had no effect whatsoever, and that these groups just naturally came to so. But they had really been a complete waste of time until 2014, and now they are better. And there's something else that I very strongly feel, both about global health and about transhumanism. I already mentioned it before. We cannot make the barrier to entry too high. A lot of people, when they get talking really scholarly about something, they begin quoting books and literature and so on. They can give you the impression that if you haven't read all that, that you really don't belong in the field, or you got to understand it all. And modern life is very different from that. You have a lot of people whose probably real lives are quite unsatisfactory, spending entire days sending their opinions out into the internet on the basis of no data whatsoever. These are just feelings of people who haven't read anything and won't read anything and are insulted by the suggestions. So between 2008 and 2011, I wanted to be modern, digital, and so I was contributing a lot of text blogs and video blogs to a site called internetevolution.com. And I discovered this phenomenon of people writing blogs criticizing books that they haven't read. I mean, they'd be insulted by the suggestion that you would even think they would read the book that they're writing this blog about. And this occurred both with Ray Kurzweil's book, the Singularity is Near, and Peter Diamandis' Abundance book, many others. So that's frustrating, right? It seems like a violation of natural law. And so what's the worst that could happen in this circumstance? Well, suppose I tell you that internetevolution.com is supported by IBM. It's an IBM site. They're paying for it. So what do you think might happen? Well, on March 7th, it's a Friday, March 7th, 2014, I don't know if it's a time when there's, a happy hour and stuff. I don't know why it was particularly this time. The entire content of that site, internetevolution.com, was deactivated, and every single URL, any previous address you might access, was now directed to another site that IBM owns. And so in a single instant, thousands of bits of intellectual content completely disappeared, poof, including 57 items from my CV. So this makes me a unique lecturer. Every lecturer who's ever spoken to you, their CV in the last year has been increasing. I mean, the more productive ones, it might increase a lot. The less productive ones, it increases a little bit. But at least it increases. Nobody has ever spoken to you who lost 57 items from their CV in the last year. And now think about it. Let's not jump to any hasty conclusions. Do you think all big corporations are evil and what IBM here did was wrong? It's an easy assumption to make. What if I told you there was no complaining? As far as I can tell, nobody complained about this. All this stuff went dark. All of it became inaccessible. And the world of the internet now is that if there was substantial protest of IBM doing this, there would be some evidence of it. There isn't. And in fact, as you might imagine from what I've told you, my ability to do high quality video has improved a lot, particularly since 2012. So in a sense, a lot of the stuff that I lost was not very good or not as good as what I'm now capable of doing. I don't know that it's such a bad thing that it's lost. But it's a very interesting scenario, and it makes you realize how vulnerable electronic content is. And as far as I can tell, this is not coming back. It's gone. Now, I've talked to you a lot about very general things, and I just didn't want you to think that I have no interest in specialized things. I thought I would give you just a 90-second overview of how my career sort of, evolved from the beginning. So at age 26, I was interested as a pathologist in this lesion you see here, nucleated cells in the vasa recta in acute kidney injury. I wrote an article about that 40 years ago, and that eventually led, believe it or not, directly to everything I'm doing today. Everything I've told you about came from that, because that led then to broader description of what the pathology of acute tubular injury is. That gave me an interest in injury in the transplanted kidney, and that then led to the Banff classification, which was a worldwide consensus generating process we've been doing now for 23 years. You can only do that using electronic means. And so you can see why that gave me a natural interest in the stuff I've been talking to you about today, because electronic communications is the best way to generate worldwide consensus. This is the little building in Banff where the first meeting was held. There were 21 people at that meeting. The meetings are a lot bigger now. And we have plans going through 2021. So although I've talked to you about a lot of really big picture issues, I'm still as passionate about that little lesion and the pathology of acute renal failure and the transplanted kidney as any of you might be about any specialized topic. So how are we doing disseminating ideas, and how would we judge that? Any of you who know that, well, you all do know the TV program, The Big Bang Theory. There are 20 million people watching that. The subjects it talks about are similar to those in global health and to transhumanism. So that's what we could shoot for. And how are we doing? So there are 20 million there. In the largest meeting about singularitarian transhumanist stuff, those videos get 9,000 views. The videos from the course max out at 2,500. So there's an order of magnitude difference between the number of human beings that the Big Bang Theory reaches, and I think that's the potential that we could reach with the sort of thing that we're interested in, and the numbers that we're reaching today. There are specific Singularity episodes about transhumanism, and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak was on that same one. So I'm looking for suggestions on how to capture the imagination of the public, to start everybody thinking, talking about these matters. And the same issue exists for global health as it does for transhumanism. It seems like intrinsically these are subjects that every human being should be interested in, or every medical professional, or everybody in science. How can we increase the number of people who actually are reached by these ideas? So we need to find innovative ways to promote organized thinking about the future in universities and beyond. We need to make both of those disciplines accessible, inclusive, low barriers to entry. We need to particularly value what young people can bring. There is science behind the fact that the genius of young people, the way the brain works to create ideas in young people, is different from the genius in older people. A lot of important problems in life older people cannot solve. And so it doesn't mean we should give up. It means that whatever potential you thought young people had to solve problems in the world, that potential is greater than you previously believed. But we need to make these areas accessible. I think we need something like transhumanism for dummies. There may already be a book. I don't know. Is there a book on global health for dummies? I don't know. And we should assume that global health is a primary link with transhumanism, medicine writ large, and the stuff I've been talking about. Rome wasn't built in a day, but I think this is something well worth working on. And you may ask how I define a young person. Those of you who just turned 30, I don't know, we'll make it 31, but there are some interesting thoughts about what youth is. Isaac Asimov, until shortly before his death at age 72, referred to himself as being in my late youth. That's what I think about it. Similar situation faces all of us when youth will be continued, perhaps with reversal of aging well beyond age 72. And so you may have been thinking that I'm suggesting that a lot of the boundaries, a lot of the limits, a lot of the confines that you believe exist in normal life, that I seem to completely discount them. And I'm telling you that a lot of these boundaries, limits, confines that you may be thinking of will not exist in the future. From the beginning, you always thought that there were things in life you could not have, right? We're facing a future where the challenge could be exactly the opposite of that, where you're seated on the top of Maslow's pyramid of self-actualization. All jobs below that, machines are able to do better than human beings. That's a very different challenge from the challenge you thought existed. In that world, anything you want, you can have. Virtual reality is better than real reality. Virtual reality can be shared with friends. So any experience you want, you can have. And this is potentially possible. And it means that the whole challenge of life is quite the opposite of what you previously thought. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening today.
Thank you very much. Questions? You talked about the idea of end of disease, and I'm curious, in the work that you've been talking about, how people are dealing with infectious agents that continue to provide a moving target, things like infectious disease that are continually adapting, new emerging pathogens, and so on. Do they deal with the details of that?
Well, of course, a lot of that has to do with the whole science of organ replacement. That the idea before human stem cell generated organs became popular, the idea was we have transgenic pigs, and that they would produce, the organs that we needed. It looked like the infectious disease challenges there were just not fixable. It was going to be like, in addition to all of the human diseases we have to worry about, we also have to worry about what we might catch from these pigs. And I think that is a very, very serious problem there. It's one of the reasons that this has not been pursued. I think that any medical challenge that you think of out there, you can imagine how focused resources on it can presumably make things better. And that with the advances of the future, it will be much easier to make rapid progress in all areas of medicine than it is today. But your question is a bit like the question that David usually asks at the end of the discussion of the first lecture. It's like, yeah, but what about global inequality and all these? How are you going to fix all these things? So if you make that phrase long enough of how you're going to fix all these things, it makes for a long answer. But it's just one possibility. But the thing is that we can help determine whether such a positive outcome is the way it's going to go. It could be much worse than the world of today. That is also possible. And by thinking about this, by studying about this, by talking about scenarios today, we can help to influence which way that will go and be actively working toward the more positive side of it. So I cannot guarantee that these moving target infectious diseases that they'll all be gone. But what I hope is that they're not even worse problems that, as I say, if we don't pay attention, if we focus on the wrong things, the challenge will be much greater than it is today, because the only diseases left will be man-made ones that are untreatable by definition and so on, and then a much worse situation. That could also.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, Joel beat me to it, but what I sort of worry is that I can understand how this technological movement is progressing, because we almost see it daily in new technologies and things that are coming all the time. But at the same time, just take for instance now, we're working on a fairly substantial maternal newborn health project in Ethiopia, where 25,000 women die a year in pregnancy-related outcomes. And in that country, there's 90 million people. By the year of the Singularity, 2045, they're going to have like 180 million people.
Yes.
If they don't slow down their population growth, which really isn't happening much, although despite efforts by some to do it. So what I can envision, and that's just one country, Nigeria is projected to be by that time, 450 million people or something. I mean, how is that going to ever happen? So I can see that there's so many of these environmental and human issues taking place simultaneously with this unbelievable rapid advancement, not only in technology but in science in general. I was just telling some of the students, when I studied biochemistry, well, like you 40 years ago, it's so different now. I could barely recognize the biochemistry. So I could see these two parallel movements happening at the same time, but the one never being able to fulfill its promise. And I'm not picking on Ethiopia or anything, because all countries are still engrossing and enlarging, and we still have this concept that we have to grow all the time.
Yes.
And so what do you think about that?
We're in a very fortunate circumstance in that one of the best teachers in the entire university, Jonathan White, has no reluctance to change his mind. So he really gives the best lectures in the course, and so if you go into this SingularityCourse.com, you look at the first lecture that he gave in 2011. It's totally positive about what the technology future might bring. The points you just raised about elitism and will this translate into poorer countries, will it just lead to a greater divide between the haves and the have-nots? Will it actually make things worse for poorer countries, these overpopulated poorer countries? So what he says is true of his own, psychology. You can look at this now that he has 5 lectures there, and you can watch Jonathan White's views on this go up and down. So there's the Gartner hype cycle. You look at the lecture that he gave, and he was at the nature of that, where he's saying that it's not true that a rising tide rises all boats. This is something that's just selling books for rich white people in Silicon Valley and so on. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I think by identifying these problems, we can get closer to figuring out how to make a positive solution, how to make these technological advances benefit everybody. So that we create a general, technology, smartphone-based or whatever that improves the health for everybody worldwide, right? Rather than just raising the quality of life of a few people living in the Silicon Valley, so they're really happy and everything else is worse off. So, yes.
Just to follow up, last week I had the great privilege of attending the Maternal Newborn Health Summit in Toronto, in which almost all the major speakers, including His Highness the Aga Khan, Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, of course Melinda Gates, and others, they put such great faith in what technology will do for the poorer world. Mm-hmm. And you and I, we can see that too, and with Peter Wood here today talking about on-the-spot point-of-care diagnostics for use in rural Nepal,
yes,
and in other countries. And so I think that there is that chance and opportunity to use these new technologies and new science and to exchange with them, and to, like we had one of our first ever student from our biomedical global health science research group go to India last fall and learn about Indian science. And so I guess it can happen, but everything's moving so quickly.
Yep.
And some things are moving so fast, and other things are moving so slowly. And with Desmond Tutu now up in Fort McMurray, and looking at how fossil fuels, everybody says, oh well, if he flew there on an airplane, he can't speak. Such kind of terrible things to say. They're silly, but these are the really big issues.
Language and speech making has some effect too. I think we can focus the issues. I mean, let's make the use of technology for global health. Let's say that should be maybe one of the strongest focuses. And by saying that, we can help make that a self-fulfilling prophecy and make it so. So why don't we decide what future we would like and start talking about it? And starting talking about it, believe it or not, is one way to actually make it start happening. Anyway, thank you.